All right, well, let's get going then. Recording has already started. It starts automatically. So yeah, recording started, and this is the October 16th, 2025 Crossplane community meeting. Let me go ahead and drop a link for everybody in the Zoom chat. So if you don't already have it, you have the link to the agenda document, and you can go ahead and add agenda topics, add yourself as an attendee, all that sort of stuff. So let's get started. So the next release is 2.1, and that is coming up faster than perhaps anybody was ready for. So it's always been scheduled for early November. And so what that means is with the scheduling of KubeCon North America and Atlanta being, I think, like, November 10th is when that starts. Our early November release that we've always planned for seems like a great coincidence there to get a release out before KubeCon. So let's look at the community calendar today to see what we have there. I shuffled things around a little bit to make this work out well with the time we have. So it's a slightly compressed schedule for feature freeze and code freeze, but we'll do our diligence in terms of integration testing and feedback from community and triaging to stay on top of any critical fixes that need to be done, et cetera. So I think it will all work out just fine. But so KubeCon is on the Monday the 10th. And so trying to do a release the week before, so let's just say the middle of that week, November 5th, that is, early November, like we've always been planning for. And then if we work backwards from that, having the code freeze the week before, so that we have a little bit of bake time and buffer time here, makes sense. So we'll try to do that on the 31st. And then that would be like we have an RC build and folks can go ahead and start testing that, et cetera. And then at the start of that week, we'll try to do a feature freeze where any big features are landed. And then after that, we don't take any more features of bigger size that introduce potential risks of regressions. We'll only do bug fixes up until code freeze, and then critical bug fixes after code freeze if they're absolutely necessary for the release. So today's the 16th here, and we're all together at the community meeting. So we basically have all of next week to continue working on features, and then the next week after that to work on bug fixes, et cetera. And then the next Wednesday we'll release, and we'll be in KubeCon right after that. So we're pretty much sticking to the schedule. It just I felt like it crept up a little on me this time. So we kind of have a bit of a compressed timeline for freeze and code freeze, but I think that'll all work out well for us here. So we've talked a couple times in the community meetings about the general themes for the release. So really like the top level thing here was core reliability. That was like the major focus for 2.1, because if you all recall for 2.0, we made a couple of changes. We made a lot of changes in how Crossplane works and its architecture and, refactoring, et cetera. So reliability, polishing, and hardening after the 2.0 release was a pretty big focus area. We've talked about this before, but I think folks will be pretty happy about it, is that we have introduced, and it's already merged and complete, so this feature is done, but it is a circuit breaker for real-time compositions causing crazy amounts of reconciliation when it's fighting with a composed resource and the composite resource. If they're fighting about a particular value, there's now a circuit breaker that will cut off that and halt reconciliation for a given period of time. So that'll be something that is very helpful for any sort of reliability issues caused with what we have named reconciliation storms. So it's kind of a big feature here in terms of continuing to polish and harden what we did with 2.0. And then a package manager reliability is also in that theme of continuing to make the package manager more reliable. Most of this milestone will be more in the design realm, where some long-term thinking about how to make the package manager something that really is reliable, especially if you're changing package sources and things like that. So that was something that was important to fix into. And then a whole bunch of community contributions. We've had a bunch of PRs and features and things that investments we continue to make in from this entire community together. So all that kind of puts itself together to a V2.1 which is really a continuation of what we did in 2.0 to just continue making it better. So I would a message to everybody here on the call. If there are some PRs and some features or fixes that you feel are important and that want some attention, feel free to send me a DM about those, so that if there's because I know there are some contributions we haven't been able to as a maintainer team to take a look at yet. So feel free to just send me a message and we'll try to get some more maintainer eyes on those. Any other 2.1 milestone questions, comments, feedback, or anything at all? Okay. So I think the release issue we opened it is November 5th is what we landed on, right? Yes. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for the efforts so far on 2.1, and yeah, we will have shipped it by the next time we have a community meeting. So looking forward to looking back on 2.1 the next time we get together. All right, so let's talk about ecosystem stuff, because there is a bunch of interesting stuff that we've made investments in terms of providers and ecosystem. Erhan, you look to be on the call. Do you want to go ahead and kind of talk through some of these the major investments that we've been making in providers and such?
Of course. Thanks, Jared. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So, yeah, I'm happy to announce that the Upjet 2.1.0 RC 0 is available. So this fixes the long-standing issue of generating providers that have Proto v6 features in their resource schemas. So feedbacks are very welcome. So give it a try. If you had a provider that was previously not generatable, so to say. So basically it covers the nested attributes and dynamic pseudo types. So for that, you need to kind of switch your providers to Upjet v2 first. So the Upjet provider template is updated with the latest changes in v2. So if you are starting fresh, you can use that. And we also created a upgrade guide for switching your existing provider to Upjet v2 style. So be sure to follow that and give us feedback if there is any. So also the documentation for provider generation is updated to reflect the changes in Crossplane v2. So yeah, that's the major change. So as I said, feedbacks are welcome. So this basically captures, at least manually, for the most of the stuff that you need to do, but also for the documentation, please hit us on Slack so that or open up an issue if you see any problems with that. So yeah, Jet, maybe we can go on to the next. In accordance with all these changes, Uptest v2 was available. There's just some patch versions available, the new minor versions available, fixing some bugs regarding reliability. So and we also had an update in the Crossplane build submodule that was there was a bug, or let's say some with the new v2 changes, it was not possible to locally test the providers in the make targets. So now it's also updated to kind of reflect the changes in Crossplane v2 package specification. So you can also update your providers to the latest build submodule so that you get the new changes. There was also a couple of provider updates. I didn't list all of them, but these are the major updates. There are some important bug fixes, especially for provider AWS, which had an issue with IRSA authentication. So if you had issues with that, be sure to update. And yeah, in the investment sides, as I mentioned, by the way, I'm skipping the Crossplane div for the author to kind of talk about it. So in the investment side, as I mentioned, the provider template is updated, upgrade guide is live, and the provider generation guide is updated. I have a work ongoing for the native provider template to kind of make it Crossplane V2 compatible. I'll open up a PR for that too, with all the dependency upgrades and changes. So, yep,
And
that's it from
Erhan,
my side. Yeah.
on that one, if I recall correctly, there is an existing PR that's updated that's already opened to kind of update the non-upjet provider template for V2 stuff. So look into that first to see if
Oh, okay.
what the status
Okay.
of that is, and if there's a way to contribute to that or test it or move it along. But I believe that I believe
Okay,
there's already one open.
that's good to know. So I did this for some like in some other context. It was more like in a template state. So I'll double check that. So yeah, all right.
Excellent. So yeah, so I think high level here, there is a ton of really useful investments here in like the provider generation tooling and Upjet and such. So, I think as Erhan was saying there, probably one of the most important ones besides some of like the Proto V6 stuff that now makes features in Upjet that weren't possible before, and now they are possible. Besides that, having this guide and documentation here to help folks understand if you've got an Upjet provider, what you would need to do to update it to be have namespace resources and be kind of more V2 compatible. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I'm glad we have that documentation and sort of the guidance out there now so that folks can, the ecosystem can continue to be updated. And then I'm hoping that we'll be able to do something similar of like once we have the provider, the non-Upjet template provider updated, that we can have some guidance around that as well for folks that have non-Upjet providers and how they would upgrade them for V2 support as well. All right, any other ecosystem updates or questions? I think this is the most investment we've seen shared at this meeting in quite a while, so a lot to digest there.
Jared is still Crossplane div. I don't know if Jonathan wants to give a
we
quick
have
update.
a specific section that dedicated at the end here that John's going to go over all that stuff. So we'll save that one for there.
Cool.
You'll see it in action, hot off the presses. Okay, cool. Well, let's keep on moving down then. So first one here they have is we have a very good update for our graduation efforts with the CNCF. So I know folks that regularly attend this call have been following along, and it's been a long road there since I think February of 2024. So 18 months or so at least that we've been investing in this graduation effort, and we are happy to say that now our TOC, the Technical Oversight Committee of the CNCF, our sponsors there have opened up their due diligence, like their basically all of their findings for the graduation criteria and how Crossplane fits those, etc. So Karina and Dims are the ones that were sponsoring us, and they wrote up everything they found and all their recommendations, etc. And I think something that we were all very happy to see is that their final assessment is essentially that they believe that Crossplane is ready and we've satisfied the criteria for graduation. So I think that's something super exciting to see that public statement that the head of the chair of the TOC herself believes that we are satisfied in the criteria and we're ready for graduation. So it's something definitely to be excited about. But So where we're at now with the process is that there's a public comment period open. Does this link work? Yeah, it does. So the public comment period is open now, and that's as per the graduation process, that is open for 2 weeks. And so by end of day on October 27th, the public comment period will end. And so, this is the chance for anyone amongst the greater cloud native ecosystem can weigh in with any sort of concerns or questions they have. And hopefully, at least folks from this call, if you had any concerns, you would have let me know already. But yeah, this is the time for the public to weigh in if they have anything they want to share. And then when that 2 weeks is over, the TOC does their formal vote, and all of the TOC members will weigh in with their final conclusions. And if it gets enough votes to pass, then we will be officially graduated. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that all that goes smoothly. Thanks to everybody who's been contributing to this effort over this long journey on it. This is a big milestone that I'm very happy to see. And I will be even more happy when this whole thing is done, completed, and we can formally be considered a graduated project. Yeah, so then KubeCon Atlanta, I think maybe it was the last one, so I'm just going to try to grab this links real quick. Yeah, here we go. I'm just going to steal these. Yeah, here we go. So just some helpful links for folks about all the different Crossplane related talks. You can follow those links and get the exact times and places, etc., of where folks are talking about Crossplane. If you were on the beginning of the call, Scott himself was talking about all the multiple talks he's doing, and so some of them mentioning Crossplane. So be sure to catch those. And then it's my understanding that we're going to try to put together a party as well in Atlanta. So be on the lookout for information about that if you are fortunate enough to be in Atlanta, because we'd love to see you and hang out together as we typically do. It's always a highlight of any of these KubeCon conferences, is being able to actually hang out with you guys and do something cool together. So if Victor goes, Scott will go, is what I heard. So we expect to see you there too. Sweet. Cool. Let's check this out now. I think both Jan and Max, I don't think either of them are here. Jan reached out to me and told me he won't be able to make it, and Max is not here, right? I'm looking at the attendee list. Nope, doesn't look like it. So yeah, so I wanted to share this here. So yeah, Max and Jan are typically on the forefront of adopting new things amongst the Crossplane project. So let's take a look at this real quick. I just wanted to share this, or they wanted to share this as a resource. So I wanted to make sure that it got messaged here as well. So Max and Jan went through some of the efforts. I think it was around provider Argo CD that went around some of the effort to update that provider to a be V2 compatible and have namespace resources and such. And so this is kind of from a technical perspective. These are some of the details that other provider authors. This is a non-upjet provider, if I recall correctly. This is a direct provider. So any folks that are provider authors and are not using the upjet tooling, I believe these are the steps that you would need to be thinking about for upgrading your provider. So I would I hope that this gets taken. Can maybe be used as a foundation. We can take these steps here and lessons from actually practically doing it, and take those into more specific and formal documentation. So Irhan and John, just take a note of this, that this may be a good starting point for having some more formal guidance and documentation written about how to update a non-upjet provider to V2. And along with that, Max shared a public repo that he authored that was helping. I didn't quite get through all the details about how this is used in the provider upgrading, but I believe since the current state of V2 providers is that they need to support old cluster scoped resources at the same time as supporting namespace scoped resources as well. So I believe this is a tool that kind of can, from a single API definition, you can kind of at the build process and generation process copy structs around, so you don't have to manually maintain them in two places. I think this helps out with that, of kind of deduplicating any of the things across cluster scope, the namespace scope resources that are the same essentially. So that'll be useful as well to see if let's work with Max to see if like this is something that we can have as like upstream community tooling, and it can be available for folks to use if it's worthwhile. So Jan and Max, thank you for sharing this with folks. That's definitely a good start on helping other people understand how to update providers to V2. So thank you. All right, John, do you want to take it away here for some provider policy updates? Do you want me to click this here, or do you want to drive? Or
yeah, you can click there.
Cool.
I think I'll start by saying that sometimes, no matter your good intentions, you kind of like only get feedback from folks and understand how people perceive things once it's out there. And over the last couple of months, we've kind of like taken note of some of the community's feedback and the confusion that some of our communication and policies have caused in the past. And we wanted to rectify this in a way that kind of like makes it abundantly clear that Upbound is there to support the community and has as the creator of Crossplane, has a long-term commitment to the success of Crossplane. We firmly believe that Crossplane's success is our success. We don't want to go and be successful without the community being successful, and so we thought hard about kind of like how we go about things, our own needs as a business to thrive and survive in this open source world, and how we commercialize our own efforts and so on. And essentially, we focused on creating more clarity. It's a long document that's tried to be written in clear language and not legalese, but it's still dry, but it should at least give folks a lot of kind of like understanding. If you have any questions or uncertainties about, can you use this package and so on. I think, like in a nutshell, what I will tell you is Upbound official packages are available to the community. First of all, from a source point of view, we're committing to work in the open on these providers and other functions or whatever we might be maintaining. We will move all of the existing ones that are in the Upbound organization to the Crossplane Contrib organization, which will make them part of the CNCF governance, and it will fall under the control of the Crossplane project. They will continue to be Apache 2 licensed, and we will be any changes we make will be made upstream in those repos. So we receive a lot of contributions from the community, and I can just say thank you for that. And so we know this is not just Upbound's efforts to make these providers and other packages successful. It's part of the community's overall contribution. And we want to continue to be a good community player. And so all of our development efforts will be upstream in the open and so on. In terms of, we will continue to publish regular main branch releases for these packages to the xpackage.crossplane.io registry as per Crossplane's governance model. And we will also be publishing those versions downstream to the Upbound registry. As part of that process, we do add certain additional things like SBOMs and attestations, and you can package signatures, and we also kind of like backport fixes to older releases, for CVEs and other critical bugs, and so on. What we had in the past was that people who wanted to use Upbound's official package that had all of these other things in it, they would only be able to use the latest release version. And that caused some pain where people couldn't put into a package, and if we did a new release, 2 or 3 weeks later, all of a sudden if a pod restarts, they can no longer pull that package. And that caused some drama and confusion. And we had like a workaround of just doing a V1 tag, but people know that a good practice is around pinning to a release and controlling and planning those upgrade cycles more accurately. And so going forward, all main branch releases will be available freely to the community, unlicensed, with all the goodies for 12 months from the date of release. So if a new version was released today, it is available for free for another 12 months thereafter. Why the 12-month window? Well, to be honest, if you're stuck on a version for 12 months, you might be running into security territory issues. It's also, the community and the project moves forward quite fast in 12 months time. And we want to encourage a healthy community and have people make sure that they're using at least, packages that aren't that old. On the backport side, so if we do a backport fix for a previous minor release, that's not the latest release, those are still subject to our subscription model, and all outbound subscribers on the standard plus a higher tier are able to access those backported releases for a period of 18 months. And our FIPS packages are also subject to subscription. So those are the only two kind of like elements that we commercialize. The rest is available freely to the community for use. I think those are the key changes. I hope folks find that reasonable and fair. As I said, some of our providers and packages are still in the outbound organization, and we will in due time migrate them all over. There's quite a few of them, and we just need to manage our workload. But in a short period of time, you will see all of them upstream, and you can contribute to them and enjoy the fruits of everybody's labor on them. Cool. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out in the outbound channel in the Crossplane Slack, DM me, or any other way you might want to be able to reach me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Cool. Thanks, John, for explaining that and writing all that up for everybody as well. Alrighty. Okay, cool. So let's the next thing on the agenda here is we want to talk about a proposal that's currently underway. Adam, I'll let you drive this one then, my friend.
Yeah, sounds good. I should introduce myself, I think, because I'm not usually at these meetings, although I probably will be going forward. I'm Adam. I work at Upbound, and I have been working for the last year and a half or something like that on developer tooling for building stuff on top of Crossplane. And this has been so far Upbound proprietary tooling, but what we want to talk about today is sending some of this tooling upstream, or all of this tooling upstream. So I've opened up this issue. I think the thing we want to not do is just dump a bunch of proprietary code into Crossplane and without any community input. So we really are looking for people in the community to help shape how we send this upstream. We're happy to, contribute as much of the code as we've written as is needed and is helpful. But also, like, if we want to do things a little bit differently in the open source version of this tooling, we're happy to do things a little bit differently. So that's kind of what we're looking for here is input on what the shape of this tooling should be, where it should live. And I think we're going to do this in the context of the SIG CLI group. So we'll work to set up some actual like meetings for that group and maybe dive into some of the details of this. But I guess in the meantime, my ask would be if folks have tried out the tooling and have thoughts on how it fits, whether there's things that we should do differently as we put this into Crossplane, please reach out on Slack or wherever and let me know or comment on the issue there. Happy to kind of start this conversation and start building this upstream, I guess, moving it or rebuilding it upstream. The other thing I'd say is one thing we have talked about is moving the CLI out of the Crossplane core repo and into its own repo. And that might be something we do as part of this work for a bunch of reasons, including decoupling the release processes and being able to have separate sets of maintainers and just making the CLI a little bit more flexible in terms of how we work on it compared to core. So yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind is we can do this in a separate place as well. Yeah, plugins, totally we can do this as plugins too. I think that's it for me. Happy to answer questions about this or chat about it, or I don't know, Nick or Chris, you guys have been involved in this as well. Any other comments?
Nothing from me. I joined halfway through, but +1 to what you said.
Cool. All right. I'm happy to move on then.
Cool. Yeah. So, and then Adam, I think a key thing of what you were saying there, right, is that the specifics. Like, this is a good experience that the Upbound team has built. But what the best way to incorporate this into upstream and community context is something for the community to decide together, right? So yeah, so John, I know you've been kind of the spearhead of the SIG CLI and whatnot. So definitely expect to be collaborating with Adam and getting some conversations going there about, because I think, you've got a big place in CLI going forward too, with all the work you've done at Crossplane Diff, you're interested in being a maintainer there. And we want to make sure that you have a great place there, because I know you can contribute a lot too. So we definitely we should be talking more about this soon and continue driving this together.
Yes.
Adam will have to be prepared for too many reviews for the diff tool.
Sorry, Jonathan, that I didn't follow up on that maintainer stuff just after I started chatting to you. I was out sick for like 3 weeks, so I just got back.
Just in time, Nick, to go to Atlanta and then get sick again from being in person with people.
Oh, I hope not. 3 weeks
Cheap
is an
con
unusually
flu.
high amount.
Yeah, dude. I hope you're feeling better, my friend. All right, cool. So along the topic of cool CLI stuff, let's move over to John, because he's done some really neat stuff with Crossplane Diff. And John,
Yeah,
I will ask you to go ahead and drive, since I was mentioned to you, my upload speed is terrible, and any sort of video streaming sort of thing sharing from here is probably not going to work.
all right. Let me see if I can figure out how to also share my computer audio. So give me a second, because this is not a thing I've done on Zoom before. Computer audio, video file. Okay. Oh, interesting. It wants me. That's not the right thing. Computer audio and share the screen. There we go. Okay. Can we see a blank?
Yeah, seeing some terminals appearing.
Yeah, like the first frames of the video, is that, Sean?
Yeah, it should be.
Sweet. Okay.
Oh, it's muted. I'm muted. Here we go.
I don't hear anything still on my side coming
No?
through. No.
Geez.
But it does look like you're sharing the audio, though.
I am. Well, anybody else hear anything?
Nope.
Let's see if. Okay. Just a second. I wonder which audio it's sharing. That's the question. Any better?
Nope, still don't hear anything.
I'm going to give you a little bit of a pre-record.
Oh,
Got it?
Yeah,
Is that
I
some
heard something
audio?
for a second.
Okay, cool.
But I don't hear now though, John. I
You
thought
don't
I
hear
heard it
now,
for
though.
a
Okay.
quick second,
All
and
right.
then now I
If
don't.
you did hear it for it. All right. Is
Dang
it
it.
this one? Hi there. My name is Jonathan Ogilvy. I am a senior staff software engineer at Sumo Logic, and I am
we
the
hear
author
now?
of Crossplane Diff.
Yep.
So today I'm going to talk you through a little bit of what it is, how it works. I'm going to give you a little bit of a pre-recorded demo here on my local workstation. And I have previously set up a Kubernetes cluster that's running Crossplane 2. And I have installed some XRs onto that cluster. And I am going to show you what we have there. And then I'm going to show you what's going to happen if we change them. So you can see we have some XNOP resources. These will create NOP resources downstream in the NOP provider, which basically does nothing. So I have some contents inside of one of these NOP resources. You can see what's in there right now. You can note, this is the spec. It has it's got a cache enabled, it's pointed at Postgres, it's got a list of features in it, stuff like that. So let's see what kind of a change we might want to make to this. So if I have a look inside of the modified version of this XR that we're about to diff, we can see what we've changed. So we've changed the replicas. We've changed to Postgres. We've changed the cache to disabled. You can see there's some more stuff in that file that we'll see how that's borne out. Yeah, we're going to change the replicas. We're going to change the cache. We're going to add another feature, and then we actually have a second one of these XRs that's bundled up in this file. So we're going to change both of them, and then we're going to see what Crossplane Diff thinks the difference is going to be. So if I run Crossplane Diff, it's going to think about it for a minute because it has to pull down all the Docker containers from your cluster. So it goes out and looks for all of the functions that you have running in your cluster, so that it goes out, pulls them down to run the same versions that you are running live, and it will use those locally to run the Crossplane render pipeline. So what we can see in the result here is that we've added a couple of cluster NOP resources, and those are net new. You can see that. We can see that we had an XNOP resource already. We can see that the cache changed from true to false. We can see some other stuff changed in here. We have an added feature. We can see some other downstream resources are being created. And then we have the staging app. We can see what changes happened there. And there's the stuff up here that's derived from them also. So the next thing that I want to show you is that we have a second use of this tool. I'm going to tear down the cluster and bring it back up again with a different set of XRs inside of it. So it's going to take it a little while here. But while we wait for that to happen, so Crossplane Diff is built on the Crossplane render pipeline, which is something that you've all probably been using for a while. It's built on the render pipeline. It's built on the trace tool. So what it does is it takes the XR, it goes out and looks for how, like, all the requirements that it needs to run the render pipeline. So that could be things like environment configs, any extra resources that you need to pass into your functions. And it basically runs render iteratively, and render will spit out that it needs more stuff to finish rendering, right? If there are requirements in there. And then we go and fetch those requirements from the cluster, and we do that like 5 times until we like stabilize, right? And then we know what the render pipeline looks like inside the cluster. So we take the XR, we run it through that render, and then we take the result and we diff every one of those resulting objects. and we see what those changes are. And that's great for if you have specific resources that are changing. But what that doesn't tell you is if something's been removed. If there's something that is in your render pipeline, but that's missing from your render pipeline, but is in your cluster and is owned by that XR. We have a way of we use the trace tool to identify that thing is missing, and then we show that as removed. So now I have this next chunk of the demo set up here, right? I have the setup for a composition change. So what's going to happen if we change the composition itself and not the XRs? I'm going to show you what the change is going to be when I alter my composition file, right? So you can see this is just a regular diff tool, not the Crossplane diff tool. You can see that we have added a new clause, and you can see that we have added a new NOP resource. So new resource will be created downstream, and also there will be a field based on the region that will set spec.environment. And that is on the composition. So when I make this change to this composition, it's going to fan out to all of the resources that are derived from this composition. And it's going to show you what that change would be if you made that change to the composition and then suddenly all of the compositions, all of the XRs that you had that were using that composition were reflected on the cluster at once. So I am going to show you now what it looks like when I run Crossplane diff against the composition, or diff of the composition against the cluster. So you can see this is the change to the template that I showed you over here, right? So this gets reflected back to you. And then it tells you kind of what's going on beyond that, right? So it tells you what the composite resources are that are affected. So you can see downstream that demo app and staging app are both going to be affected. And then you can see that the downstream NOP resource gets its region added. And you can see that a new NOP resource comes into existence. And you can see that this is true for both of the XRs that are derived from this composition. So that is the current functionality of Crossplane diff. Now, there's some other stuff that I would want to get into, new kind of support that I've added recently around update policies and the manual mode flag, but I am running a little short on time here. So what I will tell you is that when you have a composition update policy, that Crossplane diff will now obey that. So if you have something set to a manual composition update policy and you make a change to the composition and then you try and diff against the composition, it will not show you that one anymore because you're pinned, the XR itself is pinned in an older version. So that is most of my time here. And I'm going to pause here and I'm going to see if anybody has any questions. Thanks, everyone. That's it.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool to see it in action. Obviously, I know you've been working on it for a while. Are there any sort of more improvements that you want to make, or any limitations that folks should be aware of?
On the more improvements front, the last thing that I knew about that I wanted to support but didn't was the composition update policies and then nested XRs, and I just pushed those. So I don't have any big improvements that are left that I can think of, but obviously it's a community project. If anybody has any issues, things they can think of, nice to have stuff that's not there yet. I'd be happy to hear about those requests. The limitations of it are it's all client side. So even though it goes out and it fetches the state from the server, as much as it possibly can, it fetches things from the server. It just runs render locally, right? So if what you're doing doesn't work through Crossplane render, it's not going to work through diff. the biggest limitation in that regard is if you want to make a change um, and see what that change looks like downstream, and you have you run render against it. If your pipeline um, like makes a change to like the status field or something like that that's derived from somewhere else, you don't get that because that's the second iteration of that render pipeline where it might go out and like pick up some status from the MR that's actually created and then yank it back into the status on the XR. That won't show up.
Right.
So, and I think that's kind of a fundamental limitation of what it does because we don't actually interface with providers at all. Um, so that's the biggest limitation that's there. Um, we don't really run the reconciliation loop, right? Um, we just
Yeah,
kind of
we
do a
built
best guess.
still like a preview feature, but we built like a proprietary version, a proprietary feature in Upbound's Spaces product that does something similar to this, like a while ago, like a year ago, and it works by cloning the whole control plane because Spaces manages multiple crossplane things. It just like makes a copy of the whole control plane and then makes changes there and lets it do its thing. But it also just doesn't actually run providers there at all. It just scales all the providers down to 0, so it has the exact same limitation. Like it's hard to, without actually changing those providers, it's kind of hard to uh see what status updates would do. I guess you could try and do something like the, Terraform, this is a computed field value, but for us we have like typed fields and all that kind of thing. So
Somebody had an interesting
Figure all
idea
that out.
in chat the other day. They asked about adding a Terraform plan like feature to like the at was the if you have your resource in observe mode and it would want to make changes if you changed it from observe mode to update mode um, to show you what those changes would be without actually applying them sort of in the status somewhere. So if there was something like that where you could say, my downstream resource is I'm not making changes to it right now. So the reason that was interesting to me is because Sumo is in the process of onboarding everything to Crossplane right now, and the onboarding is a little bit nuts in the sense that if you want to make sure that you're not actually changing your resource, you have to change everything into managed mode, but give it a provider config ref that's read only, and you have to watch for access denied errors, and then you have to kind of keep looping on the access denied errors until you don't get any, and that's how you can be sure that it's not trying to actually change anything from your current state as a part of like the onboard flow.
Can you infer that today, right? If I understand, if I recall correctly, what we were going for is these days managed resources should have status.app provider as kind of a superset of spec.for provider. So while it isn't as nice as sort of just telling you, hey, I would change this right now, in theory, if you see something in for provider that's different from app provider, then you should. I guess maybe because some of the fields like can't be changed after the fact and whatnot, there's like more nuance, but broadly you kind of diff the two of those and be like, okay, if they're different, it's probably going to try and
Yeah,
change.
that's kind of what we're doing in our onboarding. This is a little bit outside the scope of the diff. So I'll like probably, poke back into that and see if anybody has any more stuff about that they want to talk about. Otherwise, I'm happy to keep digging down that rabbit hole.
I think just one thing that comes to mind watching the demos, I think there could be some really cool synergy here with the DevX stuff that we're looking at upstreaming, and thinking about having something like a project diff tool, right, where you make a bunch of changes to your project that could include changes to functions and changes to compositions and whatever, and then use like the diff machinery to run a diff against a real cluster or against a simulated cluster. Yeah, I think there's totally opportunity to like share some stuff there.
Yeah, would be pretty trivial to do a function diff, right? Because it's all the same plumbing under the hood. That's the same plumbing that's shared between the composition stuff and the XR stuff. I think it would be really interesting is like a provider diff, figure out what the provider wants to spit out for something. That's a bunch of different machinery that we don't currently have.
The other thing I thought of is in this, the discussion about MRs is in the test stuff that we've built for the DevX, you can basically inject like, here's what I think the MR would look like. And so kind of a mock MR, and that could be an interesting way to do it, is like show me a diff and like assume that the provider would do this, right? Kind of
Yeah.
gets away from like
Observed resources, yeah.
the exact like simulation quality that you have right now with diff, but might be a way to at least give you the confidence that like once that changes,
Yeah.
this is going to happen.
So if the MR already exists, I think that you'll get. We could probably rig it up to where we'll fetch the actual MR that exists on the cluster, and then use like let's use that as
Right.
that
Yeah, you
thing.
just wouldn't get the changes, right? That's the yeah.
If you had a reference to a status field or something like that. I don't think it'll currently do that. It might.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Some
Yeah, one of my
Uh,
biggest concerns about doing all this client side has always been just the fact that render's kind of trying to be a digital twin of the real controller, right? But it seems like Jonathan's kind of, I know over the last couple of months you've pinged me a bunch of times being like, hey, render does this thing differently than a real controller, right? So it kind of seems like we might have done enough whack-a-mole to get them pretty much in sync, and now it's just a case of just, you know, as we add more features to the controller, making sure that we have those represented in render as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if there's some kind of like shared library-ish type thing that we could do to converge a little bit more.
That's what I was thinking about as well, and especially if we do want to break the CLI out into its own repo. Right now, it depends on all kinds of internal packages from Crossplane, so we'll have to do some refactoring and maybe making like a pkg/render or something that yeah that maybe
mostly
the
exposed
controller
that
also
stuff.
relies on. Okay, so maybe we're further along than last time I looked. I haven't looked in a little bit.
Yeah,
Everything that I needed in order to do diff. There was some internal stuff. The YAML loading and stuff was one of the things that got pulled out into a shared place. The render contract, the validate contract, the trace contract, all that stuff's public now. There was something inside trace, like some of the like the tree access stuff that trace does that was in the crank CLI that's now shared from crank. But yeah, there's probably more work to be done in that front. But Crossplane diff uses pretty much everything from crank.
Yeah, we do
reviewing
in
the
the
render code with the
as well.
controller though is a bigger change, right? Like the controller doesn't use Docker or anything like that to actually run functions. So there's some similarity there, but I don't know, I may be a little bit skeptical that we can that it would make sense to have the controller and render like try to share code, but
you'd have to inject a lot for sure. Yeah.
If anyone has some cycles and wants to review 30,000 lines of code, I am the sole developer of the diff tool right now. So it's me and Claude, right? Claude reviews my code, and I wrote that code with Claude. So
I'm going to the KubeCon Maintainer Summit, and there's like 4 different talks on like how to handle AI generated changes in open source projects. So when they tell me the great secrets on how to review it, I will come do so.
I have enough opinions on code that I feel like I've made my opinions come through. So it doesn't look entirely like code I wouldn't have written.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same with me. Like I write almost everything using Claude these days, but it is very much like, no, go do that, no change, refactor this. I don't like the way that looks. It's just, you know, my code, but through a different interface.
I've had some luck with having it like draw and keep diagrams. Like, hey, we have a layered architecture in this thing, so like keep these layers in mind when you're building stuff. And like, how does that look in the diagram? Does that make sense? Oh no, it doesn't. I'm gonna. Pretty useful.
Cool. Well, yeah, so we're almost out of time here. But this has been a really good discussion, and it's really cool to see your efforts, John, pay off here and like see them live and running and stuff like that. So that's really cool to see the power of the Crossplane diff tool. And thanks again for your efforts on that, and donating it to the community and all that stuff. Super helpful.
One more thing that I forgot to mention that it does do is it calls into validate as well. So it uses the machinery from Crossplane validate. So it does all the schema checking for everything like inbound and outbound. So all the MRs that it wants to try to generate, it schema checks those as well. So it's pretty useful in that regard too.
Yep, nice. Perfect. Cool. So yeah, so before we meet next time, we will get the 2.1 release out. Some of us will be fortunate enough to be in Atlanta and be together for KubeCon there. If anybody who can't make that, you know, we'll see you next time at the community meeting. So thanks everybody for coming today. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.